The topic that I'd like to talk about is hisbonenus. Hisbonenus is it's actually there's no real translation into English, which is interesting. Um, the closest English word is contemplation, and it's not a very useful word, as we'll see momentarily. The idea of hisbonenus is to take something that I know and make it mine. That's the message. Is take something that I know and make it mine. So we know many things that don't necessarily impact us because we know them on a somewhat Vyodata level. And the Vyodata level doesn't alter our responses and reactions. It's only when it gets down to the Vahashivosa el Levavecha, when the thought gets down to where we are actually feeling the thought and not just knowing the thought, the that is when it changes and actually alters the way we operate. So the way that's done, it's very interesting. There's a medrash uses different words. The medrash uses different words to describe this idea of hisbonenus. It talks in the Parshas Hazinu about somebody who is screaming at his father in the shuk. The people who stopped him and said, "You're a fool. Your father, you should be listening to your father, not screaming at your father. Look how much effort he did." And besides, if you really give him a hard time, he's going to write you out of his will. I'm not going to leave you anything. Kach Omar Moshe Yisrael, im ein atem zehirin, kama nisim ugvuros asulachem amakam b'mitzrayim. If you're not zohir in all of the miracles that Hashem did for you in the past, heyu zehirim, kama nisim ugvuros u'asid lasos lachem. An interesting word, zehirim. We typically think of zehirus as being cautious or careful not to trip over a lav. That's the simplest way that the Mesilas Yesharim uses the term. But zehirin is the care and concern involved in contemplating, in thinking about something, so that you won't yell at your father in the shuk. So the word there that is used is zehirim. It's a very interesting word. And in Chovos HaLevavos, the opposite of the word zehirim is sichlus, is foolishness. The Chovos HaLevavos in Shar B'tachon, in the 7th parak, he talks about the things that prevent us, that block us from properly relying on Hashem. And he refers to them as sichlus, which we typically translate as foolishness, regarding the Borei and his good midos. Because somebody who doesn't understand the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement with him is going to never feel at ease in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's never going to feel that he is safe with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He won't feel safe because he hasn't thought that through. And then there's another sichlus, another foolishness, where he doesn't study Hashem's Torah. He doesn't know the mitzvos. So there's a very strange juxtaposition where there's things that we know, but we're not careful to dwell on them to the point where they actually change our emotions, our reactions, our responses. That is called a sichlus. That failure of zehirus is called a sichlus, is a foolishness. I want to try to give a little example based on the Chovos HaLevavos. If somebody were to say, the key to the car got me to where I needed to get to. So you would say, the key? Yes, because if I lose the key, I can't get there. So the key is what gets you there? Oh, okay. It's not the key, it's the car, it's the engine, it's the well, maybe it's the guy who delivers the gas to the pump to the gas station so that you could fill the car. Maybe it's and the Chovos HaLevavos says that imagine somebody who starts reckoning with the tool at the end of the line, the tool that actually brought Hashem, the king's message, to the person. Imagine if somebody were to engage with the tool as though the tool was the problem. And using Holocaust terminology, imagine somebody who thinks that the gas chambers killed the Jews. What could be more of a sichlus than doing that? The Chovos HaLevavos even gives a rather tragic example. Somebody who asked a very talented sofer Stam. He asked him how things are doing, and he responded, "As long as I have my hand, I'm good to go." Talented writer, talented sofer. As long as I have my hand, I'm good to go. And in the story, as it's told by the Chovos HaLevavos, his hand became disabled. He had to find his parnasa elsewhere because that was a major step out of lane. His hand is not. His hand is, if you would imagine it on the hierarchy, where the king gives an instruction, and the instruction is given to the Mishnah Lamelech, the Mishnah Lamelech gives it to the officers, and the officers give it to the lieutenants, and lieutenants give it, and finally the way that it's delivered is through his hand. But his hand didn't bring him his parnasa. Now that's a fact that everyone can subscribe to. If most people were to say, did the outcome, was it the result of something? And the answer, no, can't be. It can't be. Don't scream at the sidewalk that you tripped. Chas v'shalom. When somebody tripped on the sidewalk, so it doesn't make sense to scream at the sidewalk, and that's not what caused the person to trip. Yet, most people have not been mizbonein. They know it. At least most people do. I wouldn't say everybody does, but most people do. They know something, but they haven't been mizbonein on it. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have to use your facility, your capacity to imagine, to stretch based on a truth that you already know. This is not about hearing something that you didn't know yet. You may not need to hear anything new. You may not need to hear anything that you didn't hear yet. It could be that what you only need is in Yiddish, the expression is zu herin as opposed to der herin. To hear something doesn't mean you're listening to it. and to feel, for a thought to turn into that which you have heard on a profound, on a level that actually impacts who you are, it's more than just repetition. Not just saying it over and over again, Bezras Hashem, although that's a good start. It's a good start. Just to acknowledge that things don't happen by themselves, that they happen with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But to pause, and this does require an active pause, an active focus. It cannot be done sort of while your life's engine is running. For that, you need to stop. You need to go out to a sukkah, and you need to remember that your roof is not what provides your protection. You get a very graphic illustration of that, very, visceral, graphic. You feel it. But that alone is not going to do the trick if you don't stop and think about it. And so most people would say that their protection, they know, they've read the pasuk, Im Hashem lo yishmor ir, shav shakad shomer. They know that without Hashem's protection, there is no protection. They know that on the viyadata level. But they still get nervous. And they still get tense. And they still think that it's the roof that has to do with their protection. And the roof is just the end of a long string of agents that were given the instruction to bring the outcome to the person. So the truth is that anything at all that a person knows that he wants to have that thought, that idea make a difference, he's going to have to pause. There's those who might say he has to meditate on it. If you like it, by all means. If it works for you, by all means. But you don't philosophize about it. We're not philosophizing about something. This is something that we know to be true. The philosophers are always trying to prove what's true. They're always trying to figure out a way to prove that something is true. And of course, it's very silly because they don't even have a system of what's right and what's wrong. But the idea, we're not looking here to prove what's true. We're looking to take what's true and internalize it. And that is the mission of a person who is misbonen. He doesn't let life just go by. Now, we can't be misbonen on everything. That's not realistic. But we can be misbonen on certain things, and at certain times when those thoughts are triggered, when those thoughts come up, when suddenly something does work out or doesn't work out, and there is a sense of reaction, to use that as a moment to say, wait a second, let me think about this. What am I reacting to? Am I reacting to the fact that the pakid accepted my application? Is that what's getting me excited here? That the pakid did what I asked him to do and they granted me the loan? Or am I reacting to the fact that there's a string of things that started from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and worked their way down through this pakid, and as you get lower on the scale, by the way, as the Chovos HaLevavos says, you have less ability to actually influence. In other words, the pakid has less influence over you than the ones, the malachim or the misharsim or the spheros that are higher up in the story, who could, in theory, go back and ask Hashem to forgive, or for Hashem to alter the tzivui. By the time it gets down to the one who's delivering the papers, there's very little there, and that's why our interactions with the ones at the end of the line is almost silly. The Chazal give a mushal of a dog who, if you hit him with a stick, he'll try to bite the stick. That's the mushal of somebody who just doesn't get it. The stick, what's the stick got to do with anything? It's the person holding the stick that you have an issue with. Why are you biting the stick? but that's what dogs do. So we've introduced here today two ideas that both need to be explored. The first idea is that whenever we have something that we think we know, we can know it better. We can know it more robustly. How are we going to get it further in? That is through this meditative process, reflecting, contemplating, imagining, working it so that I actually can see myself feeling it. It's not just enough to know that Hashem is in the room and helping us have this conversation. We need to think about that to the point where Hashem's presence becomes part of our reality. And that can be done only from a yediyah to v'hashivosa el alev. That was one idea, the idea of being nisbonin. The other is that there's specific hisboninus, there's specific focus on this hierarchy of the way things come to us, the way things get managed in our lives, and starting all the way from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and down to the whatever it is that the temporal cause, and to not get caught up with the temporal cause, even though we know better. But that doesn't control what we're going to do, because knowing better doesn't do the trick. So I want to wish you not only a Piska Tova, but the opportunity through the course of the coming days, which are really designed for us to be able to be Mizbonim. They are a gift, an opportunity for us to reflect on our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that we should be able to take advantage of this time to internalize the truths that we know.